My older sister Bethany was the sun. I was a pebble in her shadow. From the day she was born, Bethany was the center of our parents' universe. Everything she did was praised. Everything I did was adequate. Bethany was the pretty one, the athletic one, the one destined for greatness. I was the quiet one, content in the background. At least that's what I told myself.
Don't be such a baby, can't you take a joke?
But her idea of a joke was my idea of torture. Like the time she convinced me our goldfish, Goldie, needed to exercise. Bethany helped me scoop Goldie out of her bowl and into a glass of water. Then, while I looked on in horror, she chugged the entire glass, claiming Goldie would swim back to her bowl later. The lake incident, as my parents still call it, happened when I was 14. We were at the lake with Bethany and her friends. I was reading under a tree, trying to make myself invisible. Suddenly, Bethany and her posse were standing over me, their shadows blocking the sun.
Come on, loser, we're going for a swim.
I shook my head, my stomach churning. I couldn't swim. They knew I couldn't swim.
Don't be such a scaredy cat.
Another one snatched my book away. Before I could protest, they had me by the arms and were dragging me towards the water. They tossed me in, shrieking with laughter as I thrashed in the water, gasping for air. I went under once, twice. The murky water closed over my head. For a terrifying moment, there was nothing but silence and darkness. Then, strong arms were pulling me out. I collapsed on the dock, coughing and sputtering, my heart pounding in my chest. I looked up, expecting to see a concerned lifeguard. Instead, I saw Bethany.
See, you can swim, it's easy.
My parents, of course, believed Bethany's version of events.
You need to learn to laugh at yourself.
When I turned 18, I received a letter in the mail. It was from my grandmother's lawyer, informing me that I was the sole beneficiary of her estate. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough to change my life. Enough to finally escape Bethany's shadow. I kept the news to myself at first, afraid of what my parents would say. I knew they had been counting on my grandmother's money to help fund Bethany's latest venture, a trendy new bakery in the city. Bethany, of course, had been full of grand plans for the bakery since she was a little girl. My parents were completely on board with Bethany's vision. My grandmother's inheritance, I knew, would be the icing on the cake. For days, I carried the lawyer's letter around with me, my secret a heavy weight in my pocket. I finally worked up the courage to tell my parents about the inheritance one evening at dinner. I waited until after dessert, my heart pounding in my chest. Mom, Dad, I have something to tell you. They both looked at me expectantly. For a moment, I almost lost my nerve, but I had come too far. I took a deep breath and continued. I received a letter from Grandma's lawyer. She left me her entire estate. My parents' faces went blank. Then, my mother's face crumpled.
Oh, honey, that's wonderful news. But Bethany really needs that money for her bakery. It's always been her dream.
My father nodded in agreement.
Bethany's bakery is a sure thing. Your grandmother would have wanted her to have it.
I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They weren't even trying to hide their disappointment. But it's my money. My parents exchanged a look that said they knew best, a look that said I should just do as I was told.
We know it is, sweetie. But family comes first, right? And Bethany is your sister. Don't you want to help her achieve her dreams?
That night I lay awake, my grandmother's words echoing, "Don't let them walk all over you, sweetheart. You deserve just as much as anyone else." My own parents didn't even believe in me. To them, I was just a supporting character in Bethany's fairy tale. Anger, hot and bitter, coiled in my stomach. But this was the final straw. They wanted to take away my future. I wouldn't let them. If Bethany wanted to play dirty, so could I. I knew her bakery was her Achilles heel. What if it all came crashing down? The photos from Bethany's launch party were like salt in a wound. Bethany, beaming, surrounded by adoring fans. My parents glowing with pride, as if they themselves had baked every last croissant and macaron. I scrolled through the images on my phone, each one a sharp reminder of my own insignificance. Bethany had even managed to snag a local celebrity chef to make an appearance. The man was practically drooling over her pastries, praising her natural talent and unforgettable flavors. Unforgettable flavors, I muttered to myself, my voice dripping with sarcasm. More like unforgettable privilege. I knew Bethany's secret. Her unforgettable flavors weren't entirely her own. She had been secretly using our grandmother's recipe book, a collection of old-world recipes passed down through generations. Now, I watched as Bethany took credit for our grandmother's legacy, her smile wide and fake. Rage, cold and calculating, washed over me. It was time to teach Bethany a lesson. I found the contact information for the celebrity chef in the article about the launch party. My finger hovered over the call button, my heart pounding. This was it, my one chance to make things right. I took a deep breath and pressed call.
Hello? A gruff voice answered.
Hello, is this Chef Michael?
This is he, the voice replied.
My name is Emily. I have some information about Bethany's bakery, and with that, I launched into my story. I told Chef Michael about my grandmother's recipe book, about Bethany's lies. I told him everything. By the time I was finished, I was in tears. There was a long silence.
Send me the evidence, he said, his voice low and serious.
The fallout was swift and brutal. Chef Michael, true to his word, investigated my claims. He compared the recipes in Bethany's bakery to those in my grandmother's recipe book. The evidence was undeniable. News of Bethany's plagiarism spread through the culinary world like wildfire. Food critics who had once sung her praises now condemned her as a fraud. Potential investors backed out, their trust shattered. Bethany's bakery, once the toast of the town, became a ghost town. The lines that had once snaked around the block vanished overnight. The Instagram-worthy pastries sat unsold on their silver trays, their frosting hardening under the harsh glare of the display lights. Bethany was devastated. She lashed out at everyone, blaming me, our parents, even Chef Michael for her downfall. But deep down, I knew she blamed herself. My parents were furious.
How could you do this to your own sister? You've ruined her.
I knew my actions had consequences. I had hurt Bethany, yes, but I had also hurt my parents, our family. The guilt was a heavy weight on my chest, suffocating me. I moved out of my parents' house shortly after the bakery's downfall. I found a small apartment and a job as a waitress at a local diner. The work was hard, but it was honest, and it was mine. I didn't speak to Bethany or my parents for months. One day, I received a letter from Bethany. Her words were short, clipped. She didn't apologize, but thanked me for opening her eyes. She admitted she had let her ambition consume her. Bethany's letter was a turning point for me. It wasn't forgiveness, not exactly, but it was a start. It was an acknowledgement of the pain she had caused, the damage she had inflicted. I still haven't spoken to my parents. Part of me wants to. Part of me needs to. But another part of me is still so angry, so hurt. They chose Bethany over me. They always have. I know that healing takes time, that forgiveness, especially for family, is a process, not a destination. But I'm trying. I'm trying to move on, to build a life for myself that is separate from the wreckage of my past. I'm not sure what the future holds, but for the first time in my life, I'm not afraid to find out. I have my grandmother's inheritance, her legacy, and I have myself. I used the money from my grandmother's inheritance to enroll in culinary school. It wasn't easy, juggling classes with my job at the diner, but it was worth it. Every time I stepped into the kitchen, I felt my grandmother's presence, her love surrounding me like the aroma of freshly baked bread. After graduation, I opened my own bakery. It's a small place, nothing like Bethany's grand vision, but it's mine. And it's built on honesty, integrity, and the legacy of my grandmother's love. I still think about Bethany sometimes, about what she's doing, where she is. I hope she's found her own path, one that doesn't involve stealing from others or herself. As for my parents, we're slowly rebuilding our relationship. It's a work in progress, filled with awkward silences and unspoken hurts. But we're trying. and that's all that matters. I've learned that forgiveness is a journey, not a destination. That sometimes the people who hurt us the most are also the ones who teach us the greatest lessons, and that it's never too late to write your own story, to create your own recipe for happiness.